In late January of 2024, the YouTube channel Cochrane Entertainment uploaded a two-part interview, about 3.5 hours in overall length, with Chris Potenza, the former voice of Chris McLean. One of the things discussed among a varied number of topics is the allegations that were levied against Chris McLean a couple of years ago that ultimately resulted in him leaving Total Drama. I myself do not have an opinion either way at this point. I want to peruse the interview myself once again, but I do highly encourage all of you that have been following the story to check the interview out yourself. It's the first time he's spoken publicly about the allegations in any form at all, and I think it's a compelling listen. I bring this up here because I mentioned the allegations in passing in the last SpeedRun review I did, and that's because there wasn't really much to go on at the time, and there really still isn't. But yes, it does appear that the change in the voice of Chris McLean is permanent, and it does appear to be by choice. And at this point in time, I think we should just leave it at that and turn our attention to the topic at hand. Say, did you know that the first season of the 2023 Total Drama Reboot still hasn't aired in America proper? I bring this up because the second season has already apparently finished airing everywhere else. I know it's a Canadian show, but it was a huge deal for a short time here in the States. Then again, it would be going to Max if it ever comes overseas, and I'm not going anywhere near that fucking company with a 10-foot pole right now. Thanks, Zaslav. But enough about that. It's time to talk about the second season of the Total Drama Reboot. As a quick recap of Season 1, I thought it was mostly decent. It definitely wasn't up to snuff with Total Drama in its prime, and honestly neither is this season, but for the most part it was alright. The cast wasn't incredible, but definitely a step up from the likes of Pockettail Island. Chris McLean's personality was at least toned down somewhat to probably somewhere in between action and world tour. And as much as I think Chris Potenza as McLean will always be iconic, Terry McGurran, who took over for the role in the reboot, did a pretty solid job, all things considered, trying to replicate Chris McLean. Same goes for Devin Mack as Chef, who took over officially for Clay Bennett. As its own thing, the season was good, just not great. Does Season 2 see an improvement over what came before? Or was Season 1 just a total fluke? Well, that's what we're here to find out. It's time to speedrun Season 2 of Total Drama 2023. As a reminder, like in the original series, Season 2 features the return of cast members from the first season. But there are two significant differences this time around. Firstly, every single cast member that participated in the first season competition returns for the second season competition, contrasting with the original series where only a portion of the cast actually participated in the competition in Season 2, while the rest participated in a sort of after-show program. The second major difference is that in this season, it's the exact same location being used as the first season. In this case, the Camp Wawanakwa that's actually not Camp Wawanakwa. In the original series, it was a bunch of movie sets, a recreation of movie lots. This, unfortunately, brings the season down for me. While the movie gimmick is kind of silly, this is a cartoon and it does kind of work for it. But here, by bringing everybody back to the exact same location, and the exact same characters at that, this season ends up unintentionally blending really poorly with the first season. I suppose in a way that actually makes sense because both of these 13-episode seasons were actually produced under one 26-episode production code, but it's still a little bit weird for me. And as far as this season's elimination order goes, and yes, I am spoiling it again because fuck you, Scary Girl, Chase, Millie, Emma, Nichelle, Bowie, Axel, Ripper, Z, MK, Damien, Raj, Priya, Julia, Caleb, and Wayne. At the very least, Wayne is one of the characters from this cast that I genuinely like, so I'm happy he won. On the flip side, though, we'll get to that. While I'm not fond of the idea of having two separate competition seasons spread out through a 26-episode order, as opposed to a one-shot 26-episode competition, I do appreciate that we do seem to have some sort of continuing storylines followed up from last season. It's not like everything from last season is just forgotten about and reset. This was also a thing in the original series, which I just really appreciate. As the two finalists from the last season, Priya and Bowie are the team captains to start this season. By the by, I don't think they actually made any alternate footage for Bowie winning the season instead of Priya, which means that is a faction of the original series that the reboot has eliminated, which absolutely fucking blows. Part of the fun of that was how you could actually do that given that this was an animated series. Who gives that much of a shit about continuity? It's a cartoon. You could absolutely make an alternate ending scene with Bowie winning. Maybe it's specifically because they planned the 26-episode order out like this that they decided that was something they shouldn't do. I guess while that's understandable, it's still pretty disappointing. As far as the cast goes, I do appreciate that Season 2 at least tried to introduce some different character dynamics into the fold. Firstly, there's the, quote-unquote, romance between Priya and Caleb. See, Priya becomes attracted to him because Caleb is this version's Justin. Except not really as interesting, sorry. And while it seems at first that Caleb wants the same, it turns out later on that no, he only wants an alliance with her. Because he's a douchebag. The first problem here is that me personally, I just don't find Caleb to be that interesting. He's definitely a lesser version of Justin. But unlike Justin in Total Drama Action, I don't feel like Caleb's shtick really worked here as well. I definitely didn't enjoy him as much as I wanted to. Unfortunately, the same also goes for Priya, who surprisingly started to get on my nerves the longer she was around in Season 2.
You tried to crush Caleb with a giant rock. That's actually attempted murder.
Chef's right. I let myself down today.
What?
Part of it was how she ended Season 1, you know, the whole rift with Millie thing. Part of it was also I just wanted other cast members to get their chance to shine. I don't hate either of them, let me make that clear. It's just, what they were trying to go for didn't really work for me. Both of them had more going for them outside of this romance, not romance thing that they tried to pull off, is what I'm saying. And hey, Caleb did make it to the finale, so that's something for him, I guess. But then you have the romance between Ripper and Axel, and yes, this was actually a thing. And shockingly, it's actually one of the better things to come out of these 2 seasons of the reboot. With regards to Ripper specifically, Season 1 and 2 Ripper are almost night and day. In Season 1, they really play up his aggressive, underhanded, conniving side. I didn't love him as a character, but he was definitely one of the better ones of Season 1, take that as you will. But Season 2 Ripper is much more compelling, actually. They go heavy on giving him a vulnerable, sensitive side, particularly in his crush on Axel. He isn't given a ton of depth, and likewise his relationship with Axel isn't given so much time or depth to it. But I think it says something, and not necessarily good, that this is one of the more enjoyable aspects of these 2 seasons. Their time on screen is actually much more entertaining than it has any business being, if we're being honest. Although it's not quite as surprisingly enjoyable as the last new dynamic I want to talk about, and that's the surprising friendship that forms between MK and Julia. I say it's surprising for a couple of reasons. Firstly, they were not on good terms pretty much at all during the first season, despite them starting out on the same team. It definitely gave me similar vibes to Heather and Gwen from the original Total Drama. Well, I guess technically Heather and fucking everybody, which ended up making the friendship that they eventually formed in Season 2 all the more shocking and honestly, all the more rewarding. Not only was it amusing, not only was it charming, but it was believable too. MK and Julia are both cunning and conniving, but just for different reasons. So in that respect, I suppose it's not the most shocking thing in the world that they would be able to click eventually. I'm just surprised that the show actually went through with it. I have no idea if the show was intending any romantic subtext between the two, but if they were, I would totally buy it.
If MK's brain drove a cool car, I'd date it.
Oh wait, no, I'm sorry. I have one more pairing that I want to talk about, and that is, unfortunately, Emma and Chase. Remember last season when they had that whole bitter breakup thing going for them, which was debatably obnoxious? Well, it kind of ended when Chase sacrificed himself so Emma could win an individual challenge. I'm bringing this up because this event actually plays into why they're actually once again broken up at the beginning of this season.
Things were great with me and Emma at the end of last season. Then she watched episode 10.
I actually kind of fucking love this. Don't get me wrong, I kind of fucking hate Chase and Emma to an extent, but this one punchline here kind of makes their whole dynamic worth it. It also helps that they were both ousted very early in this season, with Chase going out in episode 2 and Emma in episode 4. I did say I wanted other characters to get more of a spotlight this season, but I'm really glad that Emma and Chase were not a part of that because, well, fuck them, really. One thing about Season 2 that I find extremely interesting from an in-universe perspective is how early they went to the merge. The 2 teams exist for about 5 episodes, and I'm pretty sure that that's a record for the quickest to emerge in a Total Drama season. That's not to say that it was necessarily a bad creative decision, just an interesting one, because it makes this season stick out like a sore thumb. Oh, and they also brought back the immunity idol from the later Total Drama seasons, and they made it a bobblehead for some reason. I also like how the episode's challenge had the contestants pairing up. The same challenge that happens directly after the merger announcement, mind you. Feels like it kind of defeats the purpose of announcing a merger, but then again, Total Drama has never been one to adhere to realistic rule sets, which to be fair can work in Total Drama's advantage if done well. Once again this season, just like last season, we have a Final 3 instead of the traditional Final 2. This one is objectively better than the finale from Season 1, and for one reason. In this season, all 3 of the finalists actually get to compete all the way through the final challenge, whereas in the first season, Millie was eliminated from the final challenge halfway through the episode, which sucked. Also, there's more chaos involved in this finale. I just kind of appreciate how this season finale managed to really nail down the descent into total madness. And while I cannot say I love this finale, or really this cast, this finale really made me warm up to them considerably. It's also by far the funniest episode of the season, and I'm not gonna lie, I was fucking laughing my ass off at some of these line reads.
Try not falling this time!
Was that actual advice?
Yeah! Falling is bad!
No. He's got a point.
On an unrelated note, Raj might be my favorite character from this cast. He's at least up there. Oh, there's also this short bit, which had me screaming for like a good 10 minutes. That is a gag that I would fully expect from a Phineas and Ferb episode, so bravo, Total Drama, bravo. I do have to say, for as hit and miss as these 2 seasons were, this finale makes up for a lot of it. Not all of it, but I'd say a healthy amount of these 26 episodes are forgiven because of this finale. It's fucking awesome. I don't think I can, in good conscience, say that Season 2 of the reboot is better than Season 1 overall, but its finale definitely is, and it does bring up the rest of the season a little bit. With that in mind, though, I do feel that this season wouldn't be nearly as good if the first season didn't happen, because a lot of the character expansions and developments that we saw in Season 2 were only possible because we first had Season 1 to kind of delve into this with them. Without us getting our feet wet with these characters in the first place with the first 13 episodes, these last 13 episodes wouldn't really have been as impactful. I'm also not certain if I can say that I would want another iteration of this Total Drama, especially with this cast. They all most definitely grew on me quite a bit by the finale, but it was definitely a tough stretch getting there in the first place. I genuinely question where the show could go after this. The advantage that the original had over this was that it decided to dramatically shake up the status quo in Seasons 2 and Season 3. Same cast, sure, but dramatically different atmospheres, locations, challenge themes. It ultimately is what gave the show its identity, for better or worse. But now we've had 2 consecutive seasons of the reboot at the exact same location, with the exact same cast. They're almost indistinguishable with each other, and that's not necessarily a good thing. I don't know what they can do from this point on, but I will say I am at least curious to see what they decide to do. Like with when the reboot was originally announced, I am at least cautiously optimistic going into what will hopefully be a 3rd season. If there is one piece of advice that I would like to give for this show going forward, it's this. Do not touch the original series in any way, shape, or form. I didn't mention this earlier in the video because it wasn't really relevant, but I'm going to mention it now to close things out. But this season had a few distinct callbacks to the original cast. And I mean the original cast from 2007, the original first season. Episode 7 of Season 2 features Owen as a guest judge. Keep in mind that in-universe, canonically, it was confirmed that the reboot is taking place 15 years after the start of the original series, which means that Owen, and pretty much all of Season 1's cast, would be in at least their early 30s. And yet Owen looks like he hasn't aged a day. So clearly, whatever time travel shenanigans resulted in Samurai Jack not aging a day in 50 years is clearly working its magic on Owen, at least. And it stands to reason that it works on everyone else as well, because we live in hell. Episode 8 featured a standee cameo from Izzy and a mention of Courtney and Duncan. I'm curious as to why they did this. There honestly wasn't a need to do this. As much as I think the first season of the reboot is kind of mid, it does at least stand on its own merits. And this season does as well, despite these few callbacks. I should also mention that they do finally canonically confirm Owen as the first season winner definitively.
Wow! Owen! The first ever winner of TDI. I've studied his moves all my life. Still can't figure out how he actually won.
Ma'am, this is a White Castle. Like they outright stated in the episode multiple times, and I'm of two minds to this. I guess it really isn't a huge deal, and I suppose, given that they did not do an alternate ending for Bowie in the first season, it was kind of necessary to do this. But that also kind of means that they're done doing alternate winners, and I'm gonna be honest, I really miss that. Again, it was one of the advantages Total Drama had as an animated series. You could do that, and honestly, only online losers would give a shit. Also, I kind of really love the faces they chose for Duncan and Courtney's cameos. I know contextually they're supposed to look like they're kissing, but this absolutely can be interpreted the wrong way. They did it on purpose. At the end of the day, Total Drama 2023 Season 2, jeez that's a mouthful, is fine. It's an overall middling season that suffers from a lot of the same problems as Season 1, but it does finish strong, and I mean really strong. And I'd even argue that this is the best finale the franchise has had in a long time. While I'm not waiting on the future of this franchise with bated breath, I am at least curious to see where they would possibly take it in a third season. And all things considered, I think that's probably the best outcome we could have hoped for. If they do reuse the same setting and cast again, well, I'm not going to say that I'll be excited for it, but I won't openly be against it. I do genuinely like some of the characters from this cast. Raj, Wayne, Bowie, Julia, MK, Millie, Priya, kind of. Hell, I'm even warming up to Ripper and Axel of all people. So we'll just have to wait and see where this goes. I'm at least happy with how Season 2 ended, which is a hell of a lot more than I can say for Season 1. Total Drama's return certainly wasn't the bombastic success that I kinda hoped it would be, but for what it is, I think it succeeded, so I am hoping it does come back again. Just please go back to the original theme song, please. That's all I'm asking. You did not need to change it in the first place.